My name is Phung Huynh. I am a mother, an artist, and refugee. I primarily grew up in Los Angeles, but I was born in Vietnam. My mother is Chinese, born in Vietnam, and my father is Cambodian, so I'm of Southeast Asian descent, born in Vietnam. I moved to LA in 1982. So after I was born in Vietnam in 1977, my family and I were part of the influx of boat people in the 1970s and landed in an entire refugee camp in 1978. And our first spot to land was Mount Pleasant, Michigan in the Midwest. And we moved. We decided that the weather was not favorable and it wasn't diverse enough, and moved to LA in about 1982. I think the immigration experience for my parents was a very difficult one. They were young enough to be flexible, but too old to really absorb the language. They were in their mid and early 20s. And the most difficult part was in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. We were the first Asian family to arrive in that little town. So the church who sponsored us to come to the United States were very welcoming and helpful, but the community, they were kind of ambivalent and didn't know what to make of us. And language was a big barrier and culture was a big barrier. So at first it was difficult for my parents. They didn't have language, and because they couldn't speak and they looked different, the community there didn't want us there and treated us kind of like a nuisance. So an example would be when I was young in Mount Pleasant, maybe 2 years old, I had a fever, and our godparents, my sponsors, weren't there. And my mother, went to the drugstore to get medicine. She didn't have the words for it, so she was using her face and her hands and her language, and she was trying to say hot, hot, and they just screamed at my mom, like, get out of here, go back to where you came from. So living in a very small town in the Midwest was very difficult. And when we moved to Los Angeles, we immediately moved to Chinatown. And there were a lot of Southeast Asian immigrants in Chinatown in the early 80s, so that really helped my parents. Yeah. I think assimilation is a very tricky thing to navigate. I've read somewhere that it takes 3 generations to fully assimilate. I feel that my parents, having been raised and come into adulthood in Vietnam and Cambodia, that they'll never fully assimilate here in the United States. They say it's home. I think they're in between now, because now they go back to Cambodia and Vietnam, and it's not home anymore because it's also changed. And I feel that the way they see Los Angeles in the United States, that it's a house, but it's not a home. I think there's a difference. And I think for them, home is with family, with friends, with community, but not a physical space. So in my art practice, I'm primarily a painter. I draw and I paint. Most of my work is figurative, and I paint mostly in oil paint and sometimes acrylic. My work deals a lot with representation, caricature, body image, and the difficult in-between spaces in culture. So being Asian American, I feel sometimes caught in between and neither, Western and Eastern. So a lot of my work talks about that, or is about that in-between space. I feel that my parents don't completely understand my work, and that I think my work is about that. It's about mistranslation, and it's this huge piece, and everybody who comes to my work has a piece of it, and not necessarily the whole thing, because it's very round, right? So when somebody comes to a piece, it's either the side, the top, or the bottom. For my parents, it's very complicated because as immigrants and as refugees, they did not want me to be an artist. That's the last thing they wanted me to be. They wanted me to be a lawyer or a doctor, something that, taking on a profession that will make lots of money and ensure survival and a good lifestyle. So on the one hand, their understanding of my work is informed by that lens, that they don't want their daughter to be an artist. And then there's that cultural lens too, because a lot of my work is about being in between. I was born in Asia, but I was raised in America. And Viet Thanh Nguyen, the author of The Sympathizers, said it best when he's like, I was born in Vietnam but made in America. And I definitely feel that way. Like I was born there, but I was really made here. So a lot of my work deals with that confusion, that difficulty, and mistranslation. So my parents look at my work and they'll see from their perspective, the Asian iconography. But I don't think they always realize that I take that Asian iconography and turn it on its head. So an example would be I did this long painting called Live Long and Prosper, and it's the Chinese god of longevity. He has this huge head and he holds a peach, which represents long life in Chinese culture. But in Western culture, a peach is what we call vagina, and it looks sexual, and then his head is phallic. So it's playing off of both iterations and interpretations. And my mom, when she looked at that painting, she's like, it's so nice that you want to honor our culture. I love that. But she didn't see the penis head, right? My recent work in drawing refugee mugshots of myself and my family has been cathartic, confrontational, and explorative, but also honoring that odyssey my family experienced coming here to the United States. I think for me, it is an artistic investigation of that refugee experience. Again, Viet Thanh Nguyen said, there's a difference being a refugee and an immigrant. We're refugees, we're not immigrants. And a refugee is somebody who's denied and not wanted from your homeland, but also not really wanted in your host country. And I think that's a very important experience. And because of that refugee experience, there's always this anxiety and desire and needing to prove that you're valid and that you're American, right? I'm like always trying to prove I'm American enough. So in the beginning, when I was an undergrad trying to learn how to make art, it was all European art. I was constantly painting white people and never questioning in it because I thought that's what I'm supposed to do. And later during my senior year and up into my graduate work, I started painting about Chinese iconography and feet binding, and all of a sudden it's like, what are you doing? What is this? It's introspective. And the last thing I wanted to do was get caught up and not being valid as an artist because my work was seen as ethnic tokenism or identity politics, right? I think a lot of artists of color are constantly challenged when we make work about ourselves and make work that looks like us, and it comes into question. Like, what is this? Why are you making this? So for the longest time, I couldn't make work about the refugee experience because it was so personal, so much about, well, I won't be accepted as American enough. And I came to a point where, who cares? This is my experience. This is the American experience. And more importantly, it's the Angeleno experience. I grew up with so many refugees. And so, just showing documentation of my family is the evidence, but drawing it forces myself to confront it and be intimate with that experience. And then showing drawings of those refugee photos confronts the world. Like, this is mine now. This is my experience. And so I think like drawing it and making art about it is owning it and showing the world, like, this is my experience too. But also that they would even have that foresight, Mm-hmm. How did they feel when they saw these photos, these portraits? My dad has not seen them. My mom, she cried, and it was so moving to see her do that. It's funny, I feel like my parents they're like new rappers. They had nothing, and now they're super successful. So, on my dad's bucket list is to build the house of his dreams. So they finally are able to build this crazy house of their dreams. To the point where there's an elevator in it so that when they're old, they don't have to go up the stairs. But, they deserve it. If that's what he wants, right? And I said, hey, let me help you acquire an amazing art collection, And they said, no, we only want your work. We don't want to buy work that is expensive or that, is textbook. We have no connection to artwork like that. We just want to have your work. And I thought, oh my God, these are parents who didn't want me to be an artist. My mom is retired. My father has businesses in Southeast Asia, so he actually went back to Cambodia because he wanted to help the economy. So he went back and started businesses there. He has 1,000 employees. And my parents are so humble. They don't say anything. You know, about a few summers ago when I went to visit my dad in Cambodia, I saw this photo laying around on his desk, and it's the Prime Minister of Cambodia giving him a Medal of Honor. And I said, Dad, what is this? Why didn't you tell me this? You know, just for helping the economy and going back, you know. The village he grew up in, there was never a school, so he went back and built a school for that village. He got an honorary doctorate degree from, I believe it was Iowa State, and didn't tell me. And again, I found a picture of him in a cap and gown getting an honorary doctorate. I said, Dad, why didn't you tell me? I would want to be there. And he said, you earned your degree. You went to school. I didn't earn this. And it broke my heart, you know, to hear him say that he's done really incredible things. And, you know, I hope to honor him and write about it one day, you know. I think for my family, anything can be taken away from you at any time. I think that trauma of being a refugee, so it's like, so what's the big deal, you know? Typical of Asian culture, you know, modesty is very important. So growing up, my mom would never say, you're so pretty. She'll say, you're so ugly. Yeah, this is my photo. And it's so fun. It has our identification numbers. So 4 out of 8, we were a family of 8. So my parents, myself, my older brother, my dad's 2 cousins, and my grandparents. So I'm 4 of 8. My brother, I posted on Facebook, and my brother posted, hey, he's like, hey, T5487, this is T546. And I'm sorry, Kat, I love that we know how to do the Asian squat. Did you notice? Yeah. As you're filming, you squat with me.
I squatted, I'm like.
I know. I love that. That's how we know. That's a test.